My apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a cop who spent more time at the precinct than at home. The wallpaper peeled at the corners like old scabs. The carpet was a mottled grey that might have been blue in another decade, and the persistent smell of mildew suggested the plumbing was older than the landlord cared to admit. It wasn't much, but it was my refuge from the chaos of New York City, my own rundown castle. One lethargic Sunday afternoon, as the city exhaled the heat from the relentless August sun, I stood on the fringes of my small bathroom, scrutinizing my reflection in the faded mirror. I needed to shave, my beard a rough map of the past stressful week. As I nudged the mirror to get a better angle, it shifted slightly, revealing a corner of yellowed paper tucked behind it. Curious, I pried the mirror further open. It creaked in protest, the sound sharp in the quiet apartment. Behind it I found an envelope, the paper thin and brittle to the touch. Written on the front in a hurried scrawl was, "Rules of Passage." My brow furrowed. My first thought was a prank, some twisted joke played by a fellow officer or a friend. But as I sliced the envelope open and unfolded the letter inside, the list of rules I found was anything but ordinary. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to them. Never carry more than can fit in your pockets. Do not take what is not dropped. Ignore all pleas for help. Do not eat or drink anything. Avoid the man in the conductor's uniform. Never go beyond the last platform. Never board the train. If you wish to leave, you must jump in front of the train. I read through the list twice, then a third time. My initial reaction was disbelief mixed with an uneasy chuckle. It had to be a joke, a bizarre, detailed and somewhat macabre joke, but a joke nonetheless. I imagined my buddy Rick's laughter when I'd confessed to being spooked, the precinct's break room echoing with hoots and hollers. Shaking my head, I placed the letter on the bathroom counter, my detective's mind idly noting the lack of dust around the mirror. It was odd, given the general neglect of my cleaning habits. The rules themselves were nonsensical, yet oddly specific. Avoid the man in the conductor's uniform? Never board the train? It read like a bad movie script. The practical part of me wanted to crumple the paper up and forget it ever existed. Yet something nagged at me, a whisper of curiosity, or perhaps the echo of instinct honed by years on the force, telling me not to dismiss it outright. With a resigned sigh, I tucked the letter into my jacket pocket, figuring it might make for an amusing story to share with Rick the next day. As I reset the mirror, my reflection staring back at me seemed to carry a hint of caution, as if the tired eyes looking back at me also whispered, "Be careful." I left the bathroom, the letter's words echoing in my mind. It was just a prank, I reassured myself. But as the city outside buzzed and the shadows in my apartment deepened with the setting sun, the list of rules felt more like a warning than a joke. And deep down, as the evening crept over New York, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just taken a turn. A week had passed since I discovered the bizarre list of rules behind my bathroom mirror. Each day the letter's presence gnawed at me, an itch in the back of my mind that wouldn't subside. The rules haunted my thoughts, whispering through my daily routines, disturbing my sleep. Finally, unable to quell my growing obsession, I decided to investigate. It was late, the kind of late that blanketed the city in a deep, uneasy quiet. I stood before my bathroom mirror, the letter in hand, rereading each rule as if trying to decode a secret message hidden in plain sight. With a deep inhale, I gripped the edges of the mirror and pulled. The mirror gave way with a groan, revealing not just the wall behind, but an opening. A dark, elongated tunnel that seemed to stretch into an impossible nothingness. Curiosity, sharp and demanding, overtook my hesitation. Flashlight in hand, I stepped into the tunnel. The air was cool and damp, the walls rough and encrusted with what looked like centuries of grime. I walked for what felt like miles, the beam of my flashlight a small, brave spot of light against the overwhelming dark. Suddenly the tunnel ended and I stepped out onto a platform. I blinked in astonishment. Before me lay a subway station, seemingly ripped from the 1940s. It was perfectly preserved, as if it was still in use. Advertisements for victory bonds adorned the walls, and the scent of old dry wood mixed with a faint trace of tobacco smoke hung in the air. My footsteps echoed on the stone platform as I moved cautiously forward. The station was eerily quiet, no announcements, no clattering of trains. Then I saw them, people, or rather figures that resembled people, each dressed in period attire, their faces blurred and indistinct, going about their business as if I wasn't there. I remembered the first rule: do not make eye contact. Lowering my gaze, I observed them from the corners of my eyes. They didn't speak or interact with me. They seemed completely unaware of my presence, phantoms of a bygone era caught in a loop of routine. A sudden chill made me shiver, and I pulled my jacket tighter around me. As I ventured deeper into the station, I recalled the second rule: do not speak to them. I bit my tongue as a spectral old man nearly bumped into me, muttering apologies to no one as he shuffled past, newspaper under arm. My attention then shifted as a figure distinct from the rest paced the platform. It was a man in a conductor's uniform, his face harsh and creased with what looked like perpetual anger. The uniform was impeccable, the buttons polished to a shine, and his cap pulled low over his brow. As I watched, the conductor stopped and surveyed the platform with a scowl, his eyes seeming to look right through the spectral passengers. I kept my distance, observing the conductor's routine, noting his paths and stops. The longer I stayed, the more the place felt suffocating, a strange pressure building in my ears. Remembering the final rule, I knew it was time to leave. I couldn't risk getting trapped here. I turned towards the tunnel, then hesitated. On the ground near where I had appeared was a handful of coins, old and tarnished. The rule echoed in my mind. These were dropped, so it must be fine, right? I picked them up, rationalizing that it was worth the risk for proof that I wasn't hallucinating. With one last wary glance at the stern-faced conductor, I turned back to the tunnel to realize it was sealed. I placed my hand on the wall and felt nothing but cold, unyielding stone. I remembered what I had to do and scanned the scene until I saw a track with a train only beginning to take off. It accelerated at an impossible rate, but I was able to make it to the edge of the platform just in time. I jumped in front of the phantom machine that made no sound as it raced towards me. Closing my eyes at the last moment, I braced for impact, only to find myself tumbling onto the cold, hard tiles of my bathroom floor. Gasping for air, clutching the coins in my fist, I lay there for a moment, the reality of my apartment crashing back around me. I had escaped the station, but the station hadn't quite left me. As I stood shaky and disoriented, the weight of the coins in my hand was a solid, undeniable confirmation of the night's reality. The portal was real, the rules were real, and I had a fistful of evidence, like for part 2. Make the background music horror, dark, scary. Settings. Use a male, old, husky British voice for the narrator. Use YouTube audio library only. Use at Vivid Flick as watermark text. Add karaoke-style subtitles.